Hi everyone, thank you for joining the session. I hope you all can hear me. If you can hear me, then please mention a yes in the chat section. Okay, perfect. I see a couple of you are able to hear me. Great. Okay. So, first of all, really glad to have all of you over here. It's amazing to see a pretty good crowd over here right now. I'm expecting a few more people to join in. We have about 600 to 700 people who registered, but yeah, I mean, just as how every other workshop goes, I'm not really expecting everyone to join in. Before we actually start off with the content that we actually plan to take up today, I was thinking, I'll just introduce myself a little bit, so that'll also give us some time to, wait for the other people to join in as well. Um, hey everyone, I'm Rahul, the co-founder of Vidya. Vidya is basically a startup that focuses on helping students adopt a learning by doing approach while ensuring that every student gets that real-time industrial exposure. The problem right now with most students, even when I was in college, was that we always found it really difficult to bag internships or job opportunities, right? And especially in high skill domains like data science or machine learning, it gets all the more difficult because companies are expecting people with experience or with certain aspects of research or things like that. The whole idea behind building Vidya was to ensure that we can help people get their initial push. For example, we take up a lot of initiatives in the field of data science and all these things. We just make sure that we give people their initial push so that they understand the subject in a better manner and also get that initial experience that will help them bag future opportunities or internships, job opportunities, and things like that. The best part about Vidya is that we focus on a complete learning by doing approach. We usually don't, so even on our platform, if you've checked our platform out already, you would have noticed that we don't really have any videos per se, right? We focus more on a learning by doing approach where you actually need to code things out. So that's something that we strongly believe in because we've seen a lot of people face difficulties with respect to solving tasks and things like that. So the projects and missions that you see on Vidya are basically going to help you achieve your goals really quick. So that's basically what Vidya is about. Yeah, I mean, I guess I see a couple of questions over here. Someone's asking me how much do you earn? Okay, so Bhuvesh, honestly, we don't earn much over here. It's just the start, so it's pretty hazy out here. So we don't really earn much. Um, So I see a couple of you who've already participated in the WPL are also over here in this webinar. Um, Satinder, you'll be getting your certificates by 25th. Currently, we're in the process of verifying all the solutions. Okay, cool. As you all know, this particular webinar over here today is about data science, right? But how many of us actually know what data science is? Are we actually aware about what exactly the domain is about? Because a lot of people, they say that they know what data science is, but end of the day, eventually boils down to how mathematically strong you are and things like that, right? But I mean, the thing about data science is that there's a common misconception about how the domain is perceived. People just think it's about coding and making predictive models, but I mean, it's just that just give me a moment, guys. Yeah. So there's a common misconception about how the domain is taken up. So people usually assume that data science is just about coding and coming up with predictive models. But then honestly, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. Like even to build a predictive model, you need to make sure that you understand how you build the predictive model, for which you need to understand your data in depth, right? Because if you don't understand your data, then it's going to be really difficult for you to can't make a predictive model out of the data set that you have. So to actually build a predictive model, you first need to make sure that you understand data in the best possible manner. And how do you understand data? You can understand data by probably coming up with a few graphs, or plotting a few graphs between different columns in your data set, or you could possibly get some measures of data, like trying to understand the information that it possesses and things like that, trying to understand the types of data involved within your data set. So there's a lot of ways to understand your data set, and probably one of the first ways to actually understand your data set would possibly be to just have a manual look at it, right? Just go through the data set, see what columns are there and things like that. So all these things actually help you in the process of building a predictive model. So what's more important than building a predictive model is to understand your data as well as possible, right? Because the better you understand your data, the better the predictive model you build will actually work, right? So it'll have a better accuracy as well. So that's basically going to be the focus points for today. So today, as I mentioned, even in the emails, as you're already aware about, we'll be dealing with a particular project with respect to data science. Um, so this particular project with respect to data science is something that is available on Vidya itself. Okay, so I'll be sharing my screen as well with all of you. Um, just give me a moment, guys. Right. So I hope you're able to see my screen. If you can see my screen, please mention a yes in the chat section. Okay, perfect, great. Um, right. So just a small point over here. I'm pretty sure a lot of you are going to have quite a few doubts, and I really appreciate you people actually having doubts, because I think that's one of the best ways to make sure that you can learn from what's being taught. Um, so, I'd suggest you people to put up your questions, whatever questions you might have. So just keep putting it up, and I'll be answering all your questions towards the end of the session. Okay. It's just that it's going to be a little difficult to switch back and forth between tabs. So as you can see, I'm working on different tabs over here. So I'd really not want to break the flow of the webinar and the workshop. So I'll be, going through the entire thing at once, and then, you can keep putting up your questions as and when you get any questions, and I'll answer them towards the end of the session. Okay. Now, before coming to this particular mission, so this particular mission that we'll be working on today is Bitcoin price prediction. So what you can do is you can just go on to vidya.org, log in, and once you log in, just click on the missions option over here on the nav bar, and you'll find an option called Bitcoin price prediction. This particular mission is the mission that we'll be working on, Bitcoin price prediction, data science. Click on the mission, and you'll be taken to a new page. And this is the page. This is the page that you'll be redirected to. So what we'll be doing today is actually divided into 5 different parts. Okay. So we'll be dealing with introduction to Numpy, Pandas, and the requests module. We'll then be dealing with data collection. Then we'll be going on to exploratory data analysis. Then we'll move on to data cleaning, and finally we'll move on to model formulation and predictions. Okay. So each of this is a step-by-step process. So we'll be taking things a little slow. In the meantime, I'd request all of you to, probably fire up your Jupyter notebooks. The reason I'm saying this is because if you actually code along with me during this session is just going to make things easier for you with respect to understanding the concepts as well. So before we start off, again, there's one point I'd like to mention. So as you're already aware about, this is a 2-hour workshop, right? And it's practically not possible to cover A to Z of a particular topic in 2 hours. So what we're going to do is, this particular mission that you see, this particular project that we're going to work on and complete over the next couple of minutes or an hour, is basically going to be a beginner level project. Okay, so it's not really advanced, it's not really difficult or anything. It's actually going to be pretty easy because that's how we've developed this particular mission. So we're just going to be dealing with the basic aspects. Okay, so what you can get out of this particular session is basically an understanding, a pathway to actually build on your data science skills. Okay, so you by the end of the session, you'll understand how exactly you should probably be positioning yourself as a data scientist. What are the new things that you should be learning with respect to getting better in this whole data science domain? So these are things that will actually help you, that you'll actually get a clarity about. But coming to the project itself, it's going to be a beginner level project. Please do not expect to learn A to Z about a particular topic in 2 hours. That's something that is practically impossible. So yeah, I think we can get started. So before we get started, I'd just like to see the number of people who are with us. Okay, so we have about 109 people. Okay, cool. So I believe we can just get started with the session. It's already 6:15, right? Great, cool. So do you people have your Jupyter notebooks ready? Have you fired up your Jupyter notebooks, everyone? If you have, please mention yes in the chat section. Okay, perfect. So I see quite a few people. That's perfect. So just to also mention this, we'll also be sharing the codes for this particular mission. Okay, so you can actually have a look at the codes as well. But I would personally suggest you people to write the codes as we move forward in this session because it'll just make things easier for you. Okay, with respect to understanding things and all of that. Okay, so this is how we're going to take this particular thing forward. So as you notice, this particular project or mission that we call that's what we call projects in the Widhya language. So this particular mission is divided into 5 microtasks or 5 different parts. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at each of these parts. Okay. So first we'll be looking at what each part has or what we need to do in each part. Okay. So we'll just go through the content in a bit and then we'll look at the question that needs to be solved and any other objective that we might have to knock off. Okay, so right, so we can just get started at it. So coming to data science is something, as I already mentioned, it's more about understanding your data and understanding your data set rather than just creating a predictive model. Okay, in fact, that's the whole point about each and every other domain. Okay, but then the coming to data science is a little more intensive because sometimes you might have to get out of your comfort zone because you might not always work in a field of your choice or you might not work on a problem statement of your choice. So with respect to data science, obviously some amount of domain knowledge is always appreciated. But apart from that, what really matters is getting insights from the data, right? Because end of the day, you might come up with a hypothesis. Okay, you might say a particular event has occurred because of Y. Okay, that's probably your assumption. But then how you prove it or disprove it depends on you, right? So you need to probably come up with some tests, some ways to actually validate what you're saying, right? And all of this might be possible through the data that you have. But how exactly you make sense out of the data and arrive at that particular solution is what makes the whole concept of data science interesting. Okay, so that's why said that it's more about just predictive modeling. It's more than just predictive modeling, right? So yeah, that's basically what we'll be focusing on today as well. So coming to data science, you can always use different programming languages. You can probably sometimes a lot of people use Microsoft Excel as well, but in today's session we'll be using Python as a programming language to knock our objectives and all of that. So I'm assuming most of you have basic understanding of Python already. In case you don't, then don't worry, since this particular session is going to be, this particular project is going to be pretty easy to solve. So, we'll be taking up, we'll just make sure that we go slowly, and I'll just make sure that I explain whatever is required. Okay. But obviously having some amount of knowledge in Python is going to help. Now coming to the first microtask, which is introduction to NumPy, Pandas, and the requests module. Okay. In Python, so what are modules? So modules are more like libraries. Okay, so libraries are more like packages where the places where people contribute certain functions to just for the ease of usage. Okay, so for example, there might be certain functions that I use on a frequent basis. Okay, for example, now with respect to data sets itself, one common function that I use to the first function, in fact, that I usually use, or all of us usually use, is to read a data set, right? So we use a read underscore CSV or a read underscore Excel function. These functions are frequently used, and these functions actually make things easy, right? Instead of writing more lines of code, I can read an entire CSV or Excel file just by typing one line of code, right? So that just makes things all the more easy for me. And it's a function that's in Pandas. So modules are basically, wrapper classes, wrappers that actually make the job easier for you. Okay, so they're basically libraries that contain, implementations of frequently used functions. And all you have to do is just call these functions out or call these classes out and get your job done. Coming to data science, we have a couple of really important libraries, for example, NumPy and Pandas. These two libraries are extremely important because end of the day, most of the things that we'll be dealing with will be with respect to numbers and things like that. So, to make sure that you can assess. So now again, with respect to data set, if you're dealing with numbers, you can obviously come up, you'll obviously have a couple of measures that you can come up with, right? So you can probably come up with averages, you can probably come up with modes, medians, standard deviations. You might want to generate some dummy data, etc. Right? So in such cases, you might want to look at a package called NumPy. NumPy is basically numerical Python. It's basically a short form of numerical Python. And the best part about NumPy is that it's a library that is used in tandem with Pandas in order to manipulate data in a particular data set. So you might be wondering what Pandas is, right? So Pandas, in fact, is actually one of the most important modules for each and every data-driven domain out there. The reason I'm saying this is because Pandas literally has the implementation of almost each and everything you might want to do with respect to a data set, from reading it to sorting your data sets to perhaps getting a few plots between certain columns, or getting certain metrics and things like that, getting the names of the columns, getting information about each and every column as to how many null values are present, how many numerical values are present, and what types of values are present in your data set. All of this is possible with Pandas. So Pandas is a fast, powerful, flexible, and easy to use open source data analysis and manipulation tool. Okay, built on top of Python. So it's a thing that we use in Python. So yeah, it's a really powerful tool. So it's really famous amongst anyone in the data-driven domains. So it's really necessary to know how to use this particular module. So we'll be seeing. So don't worry. We're just getting started. So don't worry if you're not really understanding where and how you could use these modules. So we'll be getting to them, getting to it in the coming microtasks. This is more of just a preparatory microtask, just getting you warmed up. Okay, so after Pandas, another module that we have is requests. So you might be wondering why are we talking about the requests module over here, right? So this particular requests module is something that this particular request module is something that people use with respect to interacting with certain websites, right? So you can actually write a Python code and you can probably access a couple of websites from within your terminal or from within the code itself. Okay, so the request module is used in such cases. But why are we talking about request module over here, right? The reason we're doing that is because majority of the times your data is not readily available for you. So you might have to create your own data set. You might have to you might have the data in the database, but you might have to create, make sure that you uh, organize them in the right format, right? But a lot of times what happens is you don't really have data for a task that you might want to perform, because at the end of the day, a lot of us come up with ideas that are really unique and different, right? So we might have to create our own data set. So if you're looking at creating your own data set, request module in tandem with something called Beautiful Soup or BS4 is amazing to use, because these two modules help you something called web scraping. So web scraping, as the name suggests, is basically about scraping websites and getting information out of these websites. Okay. Uh, so you can actually get information out of these websites and probably store it in various CSV files or Excel files, or in the way that you want, in the way that you want, in order to perform some analysis on this particular data set. So that's why requests is also an important thing to use. Uh, Not always required though. So if you have a data set that's readily available, then you wouldn't really have to worry about using the request module. But yes, even if you have a readily available data set, pandas and numpy will be used more often than not. So these are three modules that I just wanted to start off with. So that's basically something that we just want to go ahead with. Okay, so now the objective to knock, it's pretty easy. So all we need to do is answer this particular question. So how do you install Pandas using pip3? Okay, so pip3 is basically a tool that is used for installing modules related to Python 3. Okay, and it's a really simple command. So in case in case I want to install pandas, all I'd say is pip3 install pandas. That's as simple as it is. So since I already have pandas installed in my system, it says requirement already satisfied. But if it wasn't, then I would have got my modules would have been loading. So in case you people don't have any of these modules installed yet, just make sure that you install these modules using pip. Okay, so pip3 install pandas is what is going to install pandas for you. And in case you want to install numpy, you can say pip3 install numpy, and the numpy module will be installed for you. So over here, since I already have the module installed, it says requirement already satisfied. So now coming to answer this particular question, how do you install the pandas module using pip3? Mention the entire command. So it's basically pip3 install pandas. To move to the next microtask, I will have to enter this particular answer over here and submit it. I request you people to do this along with me, because if you're, I'm pretty sure a lot of you are also wondering about getting your certificates, right, for this particular webinar. The only way we'll be able to award you certificates is if you upload your code with respect to what's being done. So if you notice over here, there's a section over here for uploading code. But to reach this particular section to upload code, you'll have to answer all these basic questions that are here. Like the questions with respect to every microtask will have to be answered. So I request you to enter the input the answers along with me, just to make things easier for you people as well. Okay, so moving on. So we're done with the first microtask. Really simple. We didn't really have anything to code, honestly. Really simple microtask. But from microtask 2, we'll actually be looking at coding things right now. Okay. So data collection is the second microtask. So as I mentioned, it's not always possible to have data sets readily available out there. But then when you actually do have a data set readily available, then it's always better to use that particular data set rather than creating your own data set, right? Because it's always about saving time. And one quality about a data scientist is making sure that you can get work done easily, right? While ensuring that the quality is met. So if you already have a readily available data set, it's always better to go ahead with that particular data set. For this particular mission, the Bitcoin price prediction mission, we already have a data set available, and you can download the data set using this particular link. So I just click on the download data set option, and I'm redirected to a particular URL, right? So just copy this URL, okay? Just copy this URL. You need not necessarily, copy all the content and store it in a separate CSV file. Just copy this particular URL, and we'll get to it. Okay. So just keep this particular data set open on another tab. Now coming back to the Microtask, right? So this one, if you notice, is basically a CSV file. So what is a CSV file? A CSV file is a file where you have values separated by commas. So CSV stands for comma separated values. Okay. And if you notice, every value over here is separated by a comma, right? So you have various columns over here. So everything over here is a column, and each of these rows is basically one observation, or one particular time instant of data. Okay. So you have various aspects. You have various columns like date, the market price of the Bitcoin, the total number of Bitcoins available, the market cap of the Bitcoins, the total trade volume, the block size, etc., cost per transaction, the transaction fees, miners revenue. So you have various columns like these, right? But how do you know what columns are important, right? So we'll be getting to this in just a bit. But even before that, even before I start analyzing my data set, I need to make sure that I have my data set available available in my code so that I can analyze it, right? So what do I do for that? So for that, essentially what I do is I use Pandas, obviously, because Pandas is probably one of the most easy to use tools for data manipulation and for anything related to data. So we import Pandas first, and the best part about Pandas is that you have a function called read_CSV. Okay, so first I import Pandas as PD. Okay, the reason I say as PD is because it's an alias. Instead of writing the whole name Pandas, in the future in occurrences, wherever I want to use Pandas, I could just use PD. Okay. So within Pandas, you have this function called read_CSV. Okay. So this particular function, what it does is it basically reads the CSV file for you. It parses and keeps the CSV file ready to be used in a way that you want. Okay. And that and that's what this particular function is available in the Pandas module. So if you remember, I told you to copy this particular link, right? The reason I said this is because you can just paste this particular link over here, okay, and you can read your CSV file directly. So you need not separately store your CSV file in a folder or in the same project folder, but instead what you can do is you can just paste the link over here of the CSV file. Okay, it'll just make things easier for you. So yeah, I mean, first I read the CSV file, and then if you notice, there was a step over here that said, after reading the CSV file, try the head function out. Okay, if you have read your CSV file into a variable df, then on typing df.head, the output will be the names of the columns and the first 5 rows in your data set. And that's what we've done. So over here, we've stored it in a variable called data. That's why we've said data.head. And if you notice, data.head is giving us something of this sort, right? So these are the columns that we have and the rows that we have. So it rightly says that we have 24 columns, and it gives us the first 5 rows basically. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The reason why it's starting from 0 is because indexing in Python usually starts from 0. So that's why, we start off from, that's why the rows are being indexed from 0 onwards and not from 1 onwards. So this particular head function is usually used by people just to check whether the data set is being read or not, and just to get an understanding, basic understanding. An interesting thing over here is that if I want more than 5 values, I can also do that. So by default, you get 5 rows, but I can also enter a value called 10 or something if I want 10 rows, and I can just run it down. So it's just getting read. Yeah. So if you notice, we have 10 rows now, right? 10 rows of data. So basically if you notice, the data is supposed to be in one particular row this way. It's just that due to lack of space, certain columns are shifting to the rows below it. But yeah, I mean, end of the day, you have 10 rows in total, and that's basically like 10 observations. So yeah, this particular, you can enter any value in here, and you'll be able to see those many number of rows in this particular data set. So moving on. Now, using pandas, find out what the 10/24th value in the BTC underscore market price column is. Remember, in Python lists, the index starts from 0. That's what we were talking about, right? So the first value lies in the 0th index. So now, if you notice the question over here, the question itself is to find out what the 10/24th value in the column BTC underscore market underscore price is, right? So first of all, what I can do is I can actually read columns using so this particular thing over here, this particular data that you see, this particular thing is a variable. Okay, so we are storing the outcome of this particular function into this particular variable, and the outcome that we get from this particular function is of something. It's basically a data frame. Okay, so a data frame sounds like a really fancy term, but is also self-explanatory, right? So it's basically a place where you have all your data stored. That's basically how it is in a nutshell and simplified. That's what it means. Okay, so what you can do is, obviously, when you're looking at a place where your data is stored, obviously each and every data set is going to have some columns, right? So how can I refer to those columns? How can I reference those columns, right? So to reference those columns, all you need to do is call those columns by name. So over here, the name of the column that we want to reference is BTC underscore market underscore price, right? But then if you notice, what we're doing is we're calling them within square brackets. So we're saying data, square brackets, BTC market price. If you notice over here, we're using parentheses, but over here, we're using square brackets. And why is that? Because over here, head is more like a function. Okay, so it's basically doing something for you. It's more like a function. But over here, we're trying to reference something with respect to data itself, right? So that's the reason why we're using these square brackets over here. Okay. And since the column that we want to access is BTC market price, we reference that particular column. And if you remember, we were supposed to find the 10/24th value, right? So 10/24th value is basically going to be in the 10/23rd index, because indexing in Python starts from 0, right? So that's the reason why the 10/24th value will be available in the 10/23rd index. So what this basically does is, first, this particular data of BTC market price gets all the values from this particular column. Okay. And after that, what it does is it checks the 10/23rd, the value in the 10/23rd index, or basically the 10/24th value within this particular result that's being got. So on running this, if you notice, the answer that you get would be 13.6888, and that's what we're supposed to enter here as well, 13.6888. So over here, done with the second part. So essentially what we did in this microtask was we collected data, which is basically from this particular link, right? We collected data, we read this particular data set using pandas, made sure the data set was using the head function, And finally, we just got a particular value from the BTC market price column and made sure that we are able to move on to the next task. So right now we have a data set ready. Our data set is read and it's ready to be fed into the system, okay, for any future purposes. So that's basically what the data collection task was. Really simple task. So as I already mentioned over here, we're just going to be dealing with really basic aspects because we don't really want to overwhelm everyone. Most of the people over here in this particular session are beginners with respect to data science. So we just want to make sure that the session is actually helping them with respect to learning something out of it. So yeah, so moving on, the next step, or in fact, the most important step for any data related domain is your exploratory data analysis step. So what does this mean? What does exploratory data analysis mean? It's commonly referred to as EDA, which means exploratory data analysis. And with respect to this particular thing, what essentially happens is that you're trying to understand your data in a more deeper manner. Okay. So how you do that is probably by getting up a few metrics, understanding the types of your types of the data available in your data set, understanding the columns that are present, and understanding what your target variables are, understanding the nature of your data. Okay, that is exactly what this is about. Because end of the day, the machine learning model or the a deep learning model that you use in the future to probably make the predictive model that you use in order to model your solution is going to be dependent on the data. You can't just use any random algorithm or any random model to fit a particular data set, right? It's always about using the right model with respect to your data, and to understand what model or what algorithm would be right to use for your particular data set, it's always necessary to understand your data in depth. Okay, and how you can do that is by coming up with a few plots with respect to certain columns of your data set, understanding the types of data available in your data set and things like that. However, in this particular case for today, we'll be sticking to something really simple. Okay, we'll just be looking at plotting a few columns and trying to understand you know a few things with respect to those columns. So yeah, moving on. So here, essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to plot something called a joint plot. Okay. So a joint plot is basically a simple plot that talks about the relationship between two variables. Okay. So you can understand whether these two variables are correlated or not. Okay. And whether it's actually helping you provide information and getting you closer to a particular required variable. So this particular joint plot, I mean, obviously it's not easy to write a function for joint plot from scratch, right? So instead, what we do is we use this module called cbon. Okay, so in case you don't have cbon installed, please make sure to install cbon using pip. So you can just say pip or pip3 install cbon. So the reason I'm using pip3 is because I have Python 3 installed. So and I also have Python 2 in my system. So just to differentiate between which pip I use pip3. Um, so I just say pip3 install cbon and my module is installed. So I say pip3 install cbon and it'll install the modules for you. I mean, it'll install the module for you. Since the requirement is already available in my system, it says requirement already satisfied. So in this, so here again, we are aliasing cbon to a term called SNS just to make things simpler. So instead of writing the whole term cbon, I just write SNS wherever I'm referencing it from the next time. So here I'm using SNS.jointplot. So over here, if you notice, we have various columns available, right? And the idea over here is to predict the price of Bitcoin in the future. Okay, it's to understand you know yeah, it's basically to figure out what the price of Bitcoin in the future can be. So over here, the main aim is to predict the price, right? So what does affect the price of a Bitcoin, first of all? Okay, so the price of the Bitcoin, obviously, like any crypto market is basically like a stock market itself, number one. So it depends on the number of bitcoins being traded. It depends on the market cap. It depends on the total number of bitcoins available. uh, it depends on the transaction fee. Probably it might depend on the difficulty of the bitcoin to be mined. So the thing about bitcoin is that it's something that needs to be mined. Okay, so you can't just the way to generate bitcoins is by mining it. Okay, and mining it is obviously a huge process, so not everyone is um, you know not everyone has the opportunity to mine bitcoins. So there might be a lot of factors that influence the prices of bitcoins. So how do you understand what actually does and what doesn't, right? So for that, what we do is we basically just put up a few plots. So over here I've just mentioned a couple of I've just mentioned about five different joint plots, right? But then it's just to help you people get an understanding of what these plots are about. Okay, so it's advisable that you all put up joint plots for each and every other variable. Okay, so now first of all, since we've come to the exploratory data analysis task, let's just go through the name again of this particular mission. It's Bitcoin price prediction, right? So essentially, what should your target variable in this particular column, in this particular data set be? So this particular BTC market price would be the column that you should actually be looking at predicting. Okay, because this is the price that we want to predict, right? So we want to build a price prediction model. So the price for a Bitcoin is stored in this particular variable over here. So as a result, this would be our target variable. So a target variable is nothing but a variable in which your potential output is stored, okay, or the variable which you want to predict. Okay, so that is what your target variable is. Now coming to so the other variables, basically your independent variables or the input variables. These variables, we'll have to figure out which ones need to be used. So you have tons of variables. So every other variable out there could potentially be used as an input variable. Okay, but then it's always about making sure that just it's about making sure that you just feed your model with the right amount of information, nothing more, nothing less. Okay, so as a result, what happens is that we're just trying to understand the data using various plots. Okay, so in this case, if you notice, we're using joint plots, and we've only plotted about five different columns with respect to market price. The reason we're using market price over here as another metric, okay, is because we want to understand how correlated each of these potential input variables are with the output variable, right? So that's what we're trying to understand. So the first thing is BTC underscore difficulty, which talks about the difficulty of mining. So if you notice, it's particularly increasing, and you have certain peaks up here, comes down, certain peaks up here, comes down. So it's constantly wavering, but you also notice that it's increasing, right, with certain decreases every now and then. So I mean, the correlation might not be equal to 1, but obviously there is a positive correlation over here, right? So this could possibly be a potential feature to be used with respect to your model. Okay, just keep it aside, keep it with you. Okay, so usually what happens is that when you're plotting joint plots, you'll also be able to see a Pearson R coefficient that comes up over here. Varies from system to system. Sometimes you might be able to view it, sometimes you might not be able to view it. But in case you're able to view it, then you get the exact correlation value of these two, the exact correlation between these two variables or these two columns. Okay, so what we did was we just plotted BTC difficulty on the x-axis and BTC market price on the y-axis. And over here, if you notice, what's happening is that we also have density of values, right? So we see this particular thing is basically density of values within a particular range on the y-axis. And this one talks about density of values in a particular range between the x-axis. Okay, so this is what joint plots do. First of all, they provide a basic 2D plot of the points. Okay, and apart from that, they also provide you with marginal distributions of values on a 1D axis. Okay, so that's something that joint plots help you with. Um, so that's something that's really useful as well, because you know where exactly your model might function perfectly all right, because the more denser the areas, the more data you have in those particular areas, right? So probably the other areas might be unimportant, or things like that. So it depends on you. It depends on how you actually make sense out of that particular data and how you make sense out of the particular graph. But over here, for the ease of this particular workshop, we'll be considering the entire range. Okay, so nothing to worry about that nothing to worry over there about. Um, okay, so this was the first plot between BTC difficulty and BTC market price. So if you notice over here, we're saying the data that we want to pass is the data that we're reading, which is stored in a variable called data. And then we're defining our X and Y limits. And we're saying that, we're just giving a few other rules of, what color the thing should be and what the size should be and things like that. You can always change your colors and sizes, totally up to your people. The limits over here, I've just mentioned it for the ease of understanding, because it just makes things easier, right? Defining a certain limit always makes things easier. And the limits that I've chosen over here are basically slightly more than the highest value of a particular column. So obviously, this is not the this is not completely what needs to be done in EDA. This is just a part of it, but there are so many other things that you can do. So what I'm doing here is I'm just giving you a perspective. Okay, so you can obviously in the future, when you're working with different projects, or probably after this workshop, if you want to work on this particular project itself in a little more depth, you could possibly just probably come up with more just probably do some more EDA on your data set, right? So you can understand what the max and min values of your data set are. Probably you can define a few new metrics, or try to plot a few more graphs. It's up to you people, but what I'm doing here is just trying to give you a different perspective. Okay, so yeah, we've seen the plot between difficulty and market price. The next plot, if you notice, is between hash rate and market price. This also, if you notice, it has a positive correlation, right? Because the values are constantly increasing with increase in values. So as the value of hash rates increase, you can also notice that the values of BTC market price are also increasing more often than not. So yeah, as it looks as if there is a positive correlation. The next, we're doing a BTC market price and BTC end transactions plot. And honestly, it's pretty stagnant, right? You have certain values concentrated in a certain area, but then thereafter you can see the values increasing and all over the graph, right? So there's not, we're not really sure if we can use this as a feature or not, but let's just keep it that way. Now, this particular feature, BTC market cap, right? This particular feature, BTC market cap and BTC market price are being plotted. And if you notice, it's a perfect straight line that we can see over here, right? It's like a proper y is equal to x kind of line passing through origin, okay? And a proper y is equal to x line. So this is a line that actually, you could say that it has a Pearson correlation coefficient of 1, because it has it's a proper line. There's not a single point that seems, that seems to be out of proportion, right? And rightly so, because yeah, basically the market price of a particular stock itself usually is computed using the market cap and the trade volume, right? So it makes sense. It makes sense to actually see a straight line passing through origin as your graph between the market cap and the market price over here. So moving on to the next thing, BTC trade volume. BTC trade volume over here, if you notice, it's increasing, but then you have a cluster of values over here. But thereafter, you can see that the values are increasing, but obviously they are haphazard they're all over the graph as well. So over here, the thing about data science is that it's not just about plotting these things over here, okay? It's about understanding why things are popping out this way. So for example, we just did a very basic analysis over here, right? With respect to BTC market cap and the BTC market price. What we saw a perfectly straight line over here, right? With probably a line that's similar to y is equal to x. What we did was, when we saw this graph, we not only, as thought that, okay, fine, this is a graph that seems to be like y is equal to x, but we also thought about why is it this way, right? And why is it this way? That what we thought was basically the market price is always dependent on the market cap and the volume of stocks being traded, right? So it makes sense if there's a positive, if there's a perfect correlation between these two variables, the market price and the market cap. So it makes sense that way. So it's about understanding why things are popping up the way they are. Okay, that's how you get a better understanding of your data set, and that's how you'll be able to understand if there's something that's out of place as well. Okay, so when you make plots, when you come up with metrics, when you put up numbers, just don't just don't portray them on your notebook or on your code, but make sure that you try to understand why that's happening. Okay, that's a really important quality over there for a data scientist. So, I mean, this is a very basic aspect of exploratory data analysis. There's so much more that you can do with respect to EDA. It's just that, with respect to today's workshop, I just wanted to give you all, a perspective of what could possibly done, what could possibly be done. And this is just one of those perspectives. Okay. You can do a lot more, EDA, a lot of EDA is possible on any data set, and you can actually explore it on Google as well. But with respect to today's workshop, this is all the EDA that we'll be seeing. Okay. So as mentioned in this task, what we're doing is that we plotted join plots, and it says that BTC market price is the desired output variable, because the mission states that you need to predict the price of bitcoins. Rightly so. We already discussed about it. So yeah, I mean, we already installed Seaborn, and we also saw the join plots. So let's move to the question that's available over here, right? The question is basically, which feature shows a perfect correlation with BTC market price? That is, has a Pearson R equal to 1. There was clearly one variable that showed a Pearson R equals to 1, and that is BTC market cap. This is the variable that shows a perfect correlation with BTC market price. So usually within join plots, you will be able to see a Pearson R coefficient that comes up over here. But in this case, sorry, but for some reason, with respect to my system, I'm not able to view that particular Pearson R metric over here. But looking at the graph, you can clearly say that the Pearson R for this particular graph between BTC market price and BTC market cap is equal to 1. Okay, so the answer for this particular question over here is BTC underscore market underscore cap. Right. So this is basically the answer for the third microtask. Okay. So we're done with 3 microtasks now. All we're left with is 2 more microtasks. Pretty simple ones, honestly. Shouldn't really take a lot of time. So let's move on to the next microtask, which is data cleaning. Okay. So data cleaning, so data cleaning is actually one of the most important aspects, because when we're dealing with predictive modeling, like I'm sorry, yeah. So when we're dealing with predictive modeling and early building machine learning models or deep learning models and things like that, one thing to remember is that we usually deal with numbers. Okay, it's more about making sense through numbers. Okay, so you need to make sure that you have a numerical value present in each and every place out there. Okay, in each and every row you have numerical values present, but there are times where you might not really have any value present. Okay, sometimes you might have textual values, but then there are times where you might not have any values present. Okay, so let's just go through this particular data set, just trying to see a couple of places where we might have NaN values. So basically, when a particular column does not have a value with respect to a particular observation, we call those values as NaN values. Okay, so NaN basically stands for not a number. Okay, I'm just trying to check where we could possibly find certain NaN values. Okay, it looks a little difficult to actually notice through this. But what we can do is we can actually check which columns actually have NaN values and which columns don't. Okay, and then once we do that, we can actually fill in these NaN values with a certain set of other values. And that is what this particular data cleaning task is all about. Okay. Um, so, I mean, what we're going to be doing is through the exploratory data analysis step after performing it, these are a couple of variables that we're going to be taking as the input variables. So we're going to be taking the market cap, cost per transaction, end transactions, miners revenue, cost per transaction, and the BTC difficulty and hash rate. So these are these are the inputs that we'll be taking with respect to our machine learning model. But even before we start training the model, we need to make sure that none of these rows and none of these columns have any NaN values. Okay, so what you can do is to check if a particular column has NaN values or not. Um, all you need to do is reference a particular column. Okay, from the data frame that you have. So we say data of BTC Trade Volume. Okay, dot is null parenthesis dot values dot any. So basically, as you can notice that what we're doing is we're checking if any of the values in this particular column are null. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to restart the kernel just for showing you certain things over here. Just give me a moment. Okay, perfect. So I'll have to run all these cells again because I've just restarted the kernel. This is coming up. It's a little slow. Apologies for that. But yeah, so end of the day, what we can actually check out which columns actually have null values, okay, using this is null and any function. And you can actually fill these NaN values in any column as well with the fill NA function, okay. So yeah, now coming back to this particular cell over here, what we did was we wanted to check if there were any values in this particular column that were corresponding to null, right? We were just checking for any null values in this particular column. And it said true, okay? And we're running this even before we fill these NaN values, right? So this BTC trade volume is a column that we are looking for NaN values in the beginning. And we're actually checking for it even before we use the fill NA function. And that is why it says true. So now what I'm doing is, since I've already done this, so what I know that these are the three columns that have NaN values. Okay, so since I know these three columns have NaN values, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill these three columns directly with a certain value. But what value can I choose over here, right? So usually, what happens is that you can choose to put in any values that you wish. I mean, like you can probably have your median. You can fill the NaN values with median values of a particular column. You can fill it with mode values of a particular column, or you can fill it with any averages of a particular column. Okay, or you can also fill it with any other custom data that you think is actually that you think would actually help your cause in a better manner. Okay, so it's totally up to you. In this case, just to experiment, I've chosen two different aspects. So I've chosen a median and I've also chosen a mean. Okay. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to use mode in this case because mode is basically the highest frequency observation, right? So, I mean, it wouldn't really make sense for us to use mode in this case because it doesn't really resonate with what's being done with respect to this project. But yeah, so we'll just look at, median and mode. We'll just be using, these two things over here. So essentially what we're doing is we're filling the NaN values with the mean for this particular column BTC difficulty, and we're filling it with the mean of that particular column itself. So when we say find the mean of this particular column, what we're doing is we're finding the mean of this particular column without the NaN values. Okay. So it just helps us fill these NaN values or cells with null values with a particular value, which in this case is the mean of this particular column. Similarly, for this column, BTC transaction fees, we're filling it with the median. And so is the case with the trade volume, for which we're filling it with the median of that particular column. So now let's just check if, the null values are being filled up or not, right? And to do that, I, call the same function again. So I just check whether, any of the values in this particular column correspond to null or not. So when I do that, it says false. So essentially what that means is that now my this particular column, it had NaN values in the beginning, okay, before we ran this particular fill NA function. But then after running this, the NaN cells have been filled with a particular median value, okay? And that is why we're getting the term false over here, okay? So that's basically about, the data cleaning aspect. Really simple over here. This is not all about data cleaning again. It's just one aspect of data cleaning. A lot of times you might have textual values as well. So you might want to convert these textual values in a certain aspect to numbers itself. How you do that, you have various algorithms for that. You can probably use, account vectorizer, or, you can possibly use a TF-IDF, things like that. So you have various algorithms for that. We won't be diving into that. Just wanted to give you a perspective over here. And yeah, I think the perspective was conveyed through, this fill NA function, where, we're just trying to fill in the NaN values within a particular data set. Okay. So that's basically what this particular microtask was about. Now coming to the question over here, what function in Pandas allows you to fill cells in a column that have NaN values? So we just need to mention the name of the function. So the function name is basically fill NA, right? Because if you notice, this is the function that we're using to fill NaN cells with a particular value. So let's just submit this. And done. So we're done with this particular microtask as well. So moving on to the next microtask, which is the final microtask. We're almost there. We're done with like 80% of the project already, and it's hardly been an hour since we started. So I think we're going at a good pace. Just before coming to this particular microtask, I just want to understand if all of you are following or not. So if you're following, just please mention yes in the chat section. And if you have any questions so far, you can also mention those questions in the chat section. Okay, perfect. Cool. Great then, that's great. Okay, so I'm just checking if there are questions over here. Okay, I see that most of you are actually giving out answers, which is great. And actually helping your fellow peers out here, which is great again. Okay. Okay, so I see that someone has Someone says that their answer isn't getting submitted on the website. Is everyone facing the same problem? Are all of you, is anyone else facing this problem of not being able to submit answers on the website? Okay. Gayatri, could you just feedback on the Slack workspace, the community workspace that we have, and we'll look into it. Probably there's an issue with one user account. We'll make sure that we fix that up. Also, I see Manohar has a question over here, which says, "Can you explain EDA once again?" Sure, Manohar. So EDA, in a nutshell, basically what it is it stands for exploratory data analysis. Okay, and what is exploratory data analysis? As the name suggests, it's about exploring your data, okay, and analyzing it. Now, how do you explore your data, right? So you might have a data set, okay, you have certain values, you have, you might have certain textual values over there as well. You might have numerical values, but then you first need to make sure that before you formulate a model and ask a machine to understand what the numbers or text mean, you need to make sure that before that happens, you yourself understand the data set in a proper manner, right? Because end of the day, the machine is going to build a model depending on what you tell it to build, right? So the model is going to be as good as your understanding of the data set is going to be. So for that, what you need to do is you need to explore your data set. So what it means is that essentially you can, you just understand your data, understand how your data set actually functions. Like for example, first you identify what is the target variable, okay, and then using this target variable, try to probably plot a few plots, as we went through over here with respect to joint plots, right? So we put up a few joint plots with respect to a few columns available in the data set with respect to the target variable, which was BTC market price. So we went through these things, and then we saw whether there was a correlation between each of these each of these terms over here and things like that. Apart from that, another exploratory analysis you could do is possibly look at means, modes, and medians of a particular column. Just try to make sure that you get an understanding of what the ranges of your particular columns are, for each and every column is, and things like that. You can also understand certain aspects of NaN values and all of that. So you can possibly just understand which columns have NaN values, which columns don't. So all these things, end of the day, they, when combined together, form something called exploratory data analysis. So in a nutshell, it's all about understanding your data set in a better manner. Okay, so that's what exploratory data analysis is about. Um, okay. Um, okay, great. So moving on, I see that someone else also has a question. Do we need to take care of the outliers in the columns before training the linear regression model? Yes, that is usually a thing that we do, Pavan. It's always advisable to make sure that you take care of these outliers, because end of the day, outliers, they might give you information, but they might give you information in a wrong direction, right? You want to make sure that the data that you have is following a particular flow, right? So it's always nice to make sure that you take care of these outliers. Sometimes a general approach is to remove outliers from your data set, but how you term these data points as outliers depends on your understanding of the data set. So yeah. So Aditi, you can use heat maps as well. I just wanted to use joint plots over here with respect to this particular task, just to give a basic understanding of what are the types of plots we can use. So usually people use heat maps, which is a great way to actually compute correlation, as you mentioned. But in this case, we just used you know uh, the joint plots. Yeah. So, Shaunak, we come to conclusion by just looking at the plots of the. We just come to a conclusion over here because I mean, see, the thing is that obviously over here it's basically more like hearsay for us, right? So if you want to exactly find what the correlation values are, you can always compute them itself. But I mean, yeah, over here is just like, more about looking at the plots and trying to understand whether there's a positive or negative correlation, right? So you can always do that. It might not give you the exact value. It's just going to give you an intuition on how you could possibly, uh, yeah, it just gives you an intuition on how you could possibly, uh, or where, on which part of the axis, like less than zero, more than zero, does your correlation lie. That's something you can do. So Anurag, see, it's not always okay. So not always does it happen that way. So I mean, see, yes, definitely there are times where the data would head towards assuming rather than realistic when we use means and modes or medians. But end of the day, it's also about making sure that you have enough data points, right? So it's about making sure that you make a realistic assumption. That's what you could say, right? So for making that realistic assumption, obviously you need to understand how where the values lie. So over here, as I mentioned, we are filling the NaN values with medians and means over here, but you can always fill it with any other values that you think would be apt as well. So if you think you have a different metric or a different way to actually replace these values, you could always use that particular metric as well, not necessary to go with mean, mode, or medians. So definitely there are instances where the data would head towards assuming rather than realistic with respect to using means and medians. But if you're looking at making sure that you have enough data points available rather than the quality of the data available, then sure, that is a trade-off that you can make. So in place is just a factor to make sure that the values are being replaced, Hema. So that's just a that's just an argument over there. Aditya, the dependent variable is basically the target variable, right? And the target variable is BTC market price. Yeah, Pawar, if you have more null values in different columns, then yeah, I mean, please feel free to make sure that the values are removed. And Anurag, see again, it always depends on the data set, right? So over here we have about, I'm sorry, just give me a moment. So we have about, let's say, around 8,000 rows, I'm guessing, around 8,000, 9,000 rows. But nevertheless, I mean, if you have like about 8,000, 9,000 rows, dropping around 100, 200 rows shouldn't be a problem, right? Because you still have information you have enough information, okay? But now if you just have, let's say, about 1,000 rows, okay, and you have 500 rows which have NaN values, then you will essentially have to drop all those 500 rows and you'll be left with only 500 rows to train your model, right? So in that case, what's going to happen is that you're going to lose out a lot of information. You won't have enough information to train your model. So it always depends on the amount of observations you have, amount of data you have and all of that. So yeah, it totally depends on the data set and the size of the data set and the number of NaN values that you have as well. Okay. So moving on, I think let's. I think we should be diving into the last microtask that we have over here. I'll be answering all the other questions that you people put up once we're done with the final microtask. Uh, just want to make sure that we don't bounce off time over here. Okay, so moving on. So the final microtask is to make sure that we formulate the model and make predictions. Okay. Uh, So in this particular case, what's going to happen is that we're just going to be using a simple linear regression model over here, and the reason for that is because if you notice these particular graphs over here, I see a lot of positive correlation, and also I see quite a few terms which are actually increasing with increase in values of x and with increase in values of y. So I just feel, since it's showing a linear trend majority of the variables over here, I feel it would be better to use linear regression. And besides, it's probably one of the most basic algorithms one could use, right? So yeah, I mean, it's just something that we could go ahead with in this case. So we'll be using linear regression as the algorithm to perform our predictions in this particular case. Okay, but how exactly can we actually perform our predictions over here, right? So that's what we'll be looking at. So we'll be using a module called scikit-learn, or I mean, usually we use something called scikit-learn, but in this case, we'll be using something called stats models. Okay, I mean, it's pretty much the same thing. sklearn, stats models, these are just different libraries that we use for importing machine learning algorithms. Over here, I'm from stats models.formula.api. I'm importing something called SMF. Okay, and this SMF is what will help me with respect to building my machine learning model, basic my linear regression model. Okay, so we were done until here, right? So coming to this particular part, within SMF, I have a function called OLS, which basically stands for ordinary least squares. Okay, so OLS is basically the methodology behind which linear regression works, right? So ideally, the aim of linear regression is to make sure that we reduce the vertical distance between every point, and that will eventually make sure that we reduce the distance between all the points, right? So the idea is to make sure that the error over there, basically the perpendicular distance from any point onto the best fit line, the best fit linear regression line, is the least, right? Um, so that's basically the idea over there. So over here, linear regression OLS, they're basically the same thing. Okay. One thing to notice over here is that we're not dividing our data into train and test sets. Okay. I mean, obviously that is something that you could do, but in this particular case, we're not doing it. Okay. And the reason, because, it's just that we first want to make sure that before people actually look at splitting data sets, they understand how to build a model. Okay. Uh, so in this case, as we already know, this is our target variable, the BTC market price. And we already, if you remember, we already saw that these columns, market cap and transactions minus revenue, cost per transaction, BTC difficulty, hash rate, and cost per transaction percent are input variables, or the independent variables, right? So we'll also have to feed them. So in the ordinary least squares method, what you do is you first enter your target variable and then mention a tilde, okay? And then whatever your input variables are, you just mention all of the names of all the columns uh, separated by a plus symbol. So it basically says that, all of the market cap, the end transactions minus revenue, each of these columns are actually going to be your input. So each column is separated by a plus, okay? And then you say that the data that you want to use is the data that you have read, which is stored in a variable data, which is why we say data equal to data. And then finally, we fit the model. So fitting is basically the normal statistical fitting that you're aware about. So that's the same fitting that happens over here. So that's the thing that happens. So yeah. So now we've created the model. Okay, so creating a model seemed really easy, right? I mean, it was just like one line, but this is not it. So I mean, if you're using sklearn or stats models and things like that, obviously it is going to be easy. But then if you're someone who's more of an intermediate or an advanced user, or advanced machine learning practitioner or data science practitioner, you should be looking at also understanding the math involved behind these things. However, that is something that's out of scope for today's workshop. But you could always make sure that you understand the math involved behind these things and probably try to implement these algorithms yourself. But over here, yeah, it's just as simple. So all you need to do is just get the you can just create a machine learning model using one line of code. That's how simple it is. So now that we have the model, the next task is to predict the values. Over here, yeah, we don't have a test set, right? So instead, what we're going to do is we're just going to predict the values over the data that we've trained it with. Okay. Um, so we pass in these inputs, and then we want to make sure that we get the output. So the output is being stored in Y, because essentially what happens is that since you're passing all these columns as input, your algorithm comes up with a relationship in such a way that it can predict the market price, which is the one output that you get, right? And that way you have various such observations. So you have a market price for every observation, okay, when you predict. So that's what is happening over here, okay. So you just pass in the input values over here of all the columns, okay. So as I mentioned, since we don't have training and test set separately, we're just going to be passing the data that we have in general with us, okay. So we pass in all that data, and then what we do is we store that in a particular variable Y, okay. So now we have the predicted values with us. So now we have two things. In fact, we have the predicted values Y from the model, and we also have the actual values of the market cap, right? The BTC market cap in the column itself. So now, whenever we build machine learning models, one thing that we need to look at is, figuring out which error metric needs to be reduced. Okay, because ideally, you need to have one metric that actually makes sure that your model is performing well. Okay, in this case, we've chosen mean squared error. Okay, MSE in short. So to compute MSE, what we do is we have a module called sklearn. And in sklearn.metrics, we have a mean squared error function. So what we're going to do is we're going to import sklearn.metrics as SM, okay, and then within this SM, within this particular module, we're going to call this particular function mean squared error, okay. So we call the mean squared error function, and then within the mean squared error, we pass two arguments. One is Y, which is basically the predicted values, and the other one is the actual set of values, which is basically your BTC market price column from the data that we've read, okay, the values from that basically. So we find the mean squared error, and the mean squared error in this case is basically coming to 406.614. It depends, it depends on how, so this mean squared error, it depends on various factors. You might have split your data set, you might not have split your data set, okay. So I mean, you can have a range of values over here, okay. Sometimes you might be, probably getting a lesser value. Sometimes you might be getting a higher value. It's totally fine. So over here, we're not looking at optimizing the error, okay. The aim is to just come up with an error value, okay. This is something that, if you sign up for future webinars, we'll be talking about in detail about. But yeah, for now, it's fine. If you're getting a lesser value or a higher value, it's totally all right. So don't worry much about it. It's still okay. Okay. So moving on, now we found the MSE, right? So similarly, we can find out any values for the future as well. So if I have these, inputs with me, if I have these inputs for any future date, and I just want to predict what the price of the future dates could be, then I could still use the same model to predict the values, and that's what is being done over here. Okay. So yeah, I mean that's basically about the mean squared error part and model formulation and prediction aspect. So coming back to the microtask over here. So yeah, basically the idea was make sure that you come up with a test set and a train set and all of that. But in this case, we didn't really split that. However, if you're looking at splitting your data set into a train and test set, what you can do is you can from sklearn you have something called train test split. Okay, So what you can do is you can call this particular function. So I'll just show you how to call it. So basically, you have something called model underscore selection within sklearn. And within that, you have a function called train test split. So using this train test split function, what I can do is I can simply split my data set into training and testing sets in a particular ratio. Okay. So the ratio is up to me. I can decide in what ratio I want to split. Okay. Usually people use ratios like 70% testing and 30% training. 70% training, 30% testing, or 67% training, 33% testing. Sometimes people use 70-25, 80-20 as well. So feel free to use your own ratios over there. However, coming to this particular thing, let's assume that we are splitting a particular data set. So what we can do is we can call the train test split function. Okay. So first of all, we'll have to make sure that the inputs are defined rightly. Okay. So in this case, let's assume that I store the inputs in a separate variable. So since these are my inputs, let me just assume that I store it in a separate variable x equal to this. Yeah. And then let's say I have a y that's equal to data of BTC market price. Okay. Then I can use a train test split function to split my x and y in a certain ratio where I mention over here test underscore size is equal to, let's say, 0.2. Okay. So what this essentially means is that this particular data frame data that I have will be divided into two parts where 80% of the data will go for training and the remaining 20% will go for testing. Okay. I can also set a random state over here. But now I need to make sure that the training and testing data sets are being captured somewhere, right? So for that, I define such variables like x underscore train, comma x underscore test, comma y underscore train, and y underscore test. So over here, this train test split function essentially gives you it returns four different values, which basically is your x train and x test values initially, and then your y train and y test values. So these are the four values that we get, and that's why I'm storing them in four different variables. And then after that, what you can do is using these training sets, you can train the model over here using the train sets, and then you can test the value, test the data set using the x test, and then you can find the MSE between the x test and the you can find the MSE between the y test and the y predicted values. So here, that's how we use a train test split function. Just a really simple function to make things easier for you as well. So that's not a really huge problem over there. And coming back to this Microtask, so we've seen the train test split part, and we've also built our machine learning model, made the predictions, and computed the mean squared error. So over here, the question is basically what is the MSE of your model? Round off to the nearest integral value. So let me tell you people, the values over here are within a particular range because we understand that, over here, since it's a beginner level mission, we don't really want to since it's a beginner level mission, we don't really want people to sorry people, just give me a moment. There's a small disturbance in my side. Just give me a moment, please. Yeah, sorry. So coming back, the MSE over here, takes a range of answers. The reason we've done that is because what happens is that, as a beginner, you might split your data sets in a different format, or you might take a certain variables more or less and things like that. So we've given a range of values over here, just to make sure that this doesn't really hamper you from going forward. End of the day, it's all about making sure that you first get the concepts right. So yeah, I mean, the final results are not really that important. So that's why we've given a range of values. But in our case, we've got a MSE of 406.6. So rounding it off to 407 and submitting the answer. So yeah, so that's basically, about this particular mission as well. So we're done with basically everything from, the data collection part to analyzing the data, cleaning the data, and finally formulating and predicting making predictions, right? So we're done with all of that. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure most of you have already written the codes, but in case you haven't written any codes, what I'll be doing is, we'll be sharing this particular code with you people as well once we're done with the workshop. So hopefully by tonight, you will get access to the code. But now coming to the most interesting and probably, I think, one of the most important parts of this particular webinar, getting your certificates, right? So if you're looking at getting your certificate, make sure that you upload your code. So you might have a code available with you. You might have written a code, right? So make sure that you upload that particular code onto the thing over here. But make sure that when you upload the code, you don't upload the code as it is. You need to make sure that you upload the code only as a file, only in a zip format. So you can export your Jupyter notebook from here. Okay, so you can just download it as probably a Python file, or normal IPython notebook itself. Okay, you can just download it, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to zip this file and upload it directly. So yeah, so I have this untitled.ipynb. So I just say compress untitled.ipynb. So I have a zip file, and now I just upload this particular zip file over here. So just give me a moment, people. I'm sorry. I have some issues over here. Yeah. So coming back to this mission. So all I need to do is upload the code, and I need to upload the code in a zip format. So I just click on the attach option over here, and I just navigate to where the file is, which is untitled.ipynb.zip. Yeah, this is the one. So I just attach the file over here, upload it. And once you upload your code, you'll have to submit your feedback over here itself. So you'll have a place to actually submit your feedback. So you just need to press next. So over here, you can submit your feedback with respect to the number of stars, and you can also write a review. So only after you fill this particular feedback, a certificate will be directly emailed to you on your registered email ID. So yeah, that's basically the thing. That's how you can avail your certificates. So make sure that you upload your codes as soon as possible. We don't have any deadline though. So what we'll be doing is we'll also be sharing the code with you people. So you can also have a look at that in case you've made any errors somewhere, or you're facing an issue at some point of your code. Then what you can do is you can just compare the code that we've sent and the code that you've written, make the changes, and then upload the code. So that's something that we would recommend you to do. So yeah, I mean, please make sure that you review the mission over here, and also the webinar itself. You can review the webinar over here as well. So just make sure that you review it, because only after you review it, yes, you can generate a certificate which will be directly emailed to you. Okay. and it's pretty much instant. So all you need to do is fill in particular feedback. Um, like let's say I just say good session, whatever, and then I just click on the generate certificate option, and the certificate will be directly emailed to you people on your registered email ID. So that's pretty much it about this particular mission, but there's more to go. Okay, so now coming to this so since you people have attended the session, what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be sending a few things, like for example, we have a tie up with JetBrains as well. So we'll be sending you a way through which you can actually avail development tools and a few development tools and all of that, which will help you build better code as a data scientist. And apart from that, there's also something really interesting that we're actually starting at Widhya. Okay. But before that, I'll just make sure that I answer your questions. I'm just so I'll probably answer a couple of questions for the next 3 to 4 minutes before I delve deeper into this particular thing. So, okay, perfect. So if you people have any further questions, please mention that. Please mention your questions in the chat section so that I can answer them for you. In the meantime, I'm just going through a couple of other missions as well. A couple of other questions. Just going through the chat to see if anyone has any questions. Bharat, the reason, so xlim, ylim basically over here, right? So as I mentioned, xlim and ylim are nothing but the limits of your x and y values on the x and y axis, basically. Uh, I mean, over here, the reason why it's slightly higher is because the values on the x values, which is basically BTC difficulty, have slightly higher values. And that is why, we're giving different limits over here. Since the y values everywhere is pretty much the same thing with respect to the joint plots, it's BTC market price, right? Almost everywhere, except this one place where we kind of messed up the plot. But yeah, I mean, you get the point, right? So yeah, basically over here, the x and the y limits remain the same because it's all BTC market price, but the x limits differ with respect to the columns. So we're taking the least and highest values of columns and things like that. Ashrit, yes, the Tech Fellowship is a beginner level program. In fact, it'll be helpful. Moving on, Shaunak, the code will be shared via email to everyone that's registered for the webinar. So we'll be sharing the code via email to everyone. Chandana, yes, you'll be able to view this particular video later as well. So the link that you used in order to attend this live session will be the same link that you can use to view this session later as well. And we'll also make sure that this particular video is available on our YouTube channel as well. Pavan, yes, the fellowship is recommended for novice people. I mean, it's basically something that's helpful for beginners and intermediate level people in data science or machine learning and full stack development. So it's a holistic program over there. Vinay, yes, you can complete the whole session after the live is done. So Shaunak, the selection of the xlim and ylim was done depending on the values of the column. I mean, like over here, ylim, the reason I've taken 0 to 20,000 is because I realized that the values in the data set that I have never went beyond 20,000. So I just made sure that I captured all the values, and so is the case with the xlim as well. So I made sure that I accommodated for the least and highest values. Anurag, so I personally don't follow any books, but I do have a certain set of resources which I could definitely share with you people once this particular session is done. So when I share the code, I'll also share a couple of books with you people. Okay. Um, yeah. This particular session will be recorded, so that's not an issue. So you can view this particular session at any point in time using the very same link through which you attended this particular live. So the recorded session will be available on the same link itself. Uh, I see that someone says they have an issue when they're trying to fit their linear regression model. Could you actually put up a screenshot on the Slack workspace, because it'll be easier to troubleshoot the problems with the exact error messages. So if you could just put up a screenshot of the issue you're facing on the Slack workspace, then we'll be able to um, help you with respect to solving this particular issue. Shaunak, yeah, I mean the max function is always sufficient, right? Because all what you can do is you can just take a particular column and reference a particular column. Probably if you want, you can convert it into a list, and then you can just find the max and min values in that particular list. So that should be sufficient. Yes. Mahinder, um, unfortunately, this is the only certificate you'll be getting actually, because initially we thought we'll actually give out a certificate of participation, but then we thought it'll be really difficult for us to keep track of things, and that's the reason why we decided to make sure that we had a proper way to do this over here. So that's the reason why there's only one certificate that will be offered, and that is with respect to completing the mission. And only if you submit the code, you'll be getting that particular certificate. Okay, so I'm pretty sure you people would still have a couple of other doubts, but um, before that, there's something that I'd really like to mention, something really quick. So before we do that, I just like it if you people could, probably rate the session out of 10. So, you could just put up your rating over here in the chat section. So if you could rate this particular session out of 10, it would be really helpful for me. Okay, I see 4 people who've rated. Could the others please rate this particular session? It's just that there's something really interesting that I actually want to share with you people after this particular thing. So the quick. So it's basically something new that we've launched at Widhya. Okay, so I see a couple of 9s, 8s, 10s, and a 5. Okay, I'm sorry, Pawar. I couldn't really meet your expectations. Um, okay, cool. So I mean, I see that the general consensus is that people have, a 8 or 9 rating, which is good enough. Okay, so thank you so much for that, people. So so basically, I'm assuming that if you've rated the session as 8 or 9, you like what we've done over here in the session. So there's something that we've actually launched just today. It's called the Technology Masterclass Workshop. So usually what happens is that, you know, uh, a lot of us, we face trouble with, getting that practical experience, right? So as part of the Technology Masterclass Workshop, what we've done is we've actually designed an amazing 5-day workshop where we'll be having sessions like these. Okay, in fact, sessions will be in much more depth, where we'll be covering some really intense quantitative modeling aspects as well. We'll be looking at how to make your own formulas for certain financial technology problems. Okay. um, so I mean, it's amazing. So you can so it's a complete program where you get dedicated mentorship. You get certificates. You get access to certain development tools over 35,000 rupees. Okay, and you get codes to all the projects that are being explained. So we're actually during the workshop we'll be dealing with about 2 to 3 projects, one of which will be in the fintech domain. And fintech, as you know, is a booming domain, right? It's one of the domains that's actually really booming right now. And also you'll have access to the material kit. So we have like a curated set of material that we'll be providing to all of you, with a set of presentations, PPTs from certain professors in various reputed universities and all of that. And yeah, I mean, it's a complete holistic program if you look at it. And the best part is that program is going to be for 5 continuous days, as and it's going to be much more intense and much more interesting as compared to today's session. So it's going to be like I could say 10 times more interesting. And it's going to be a hybrid thing where uh, we make sure that we have live sessions and also certain pre-recorded sessions. But it's going to be really interesting, and it's one of a kind um, workshop. So we actually are charging 2,000 rupees for this particular workshop. But for people who have attended this particular workshop today, the Kickstarter workshop, we're offering this particular thing at just 499 rupees. Okay. In fact, the offer is valid until later today. Okay. Uh, so yeah, I mean, if you people are interested, you should be looking at this particular thing. You could just go to this particular link, vidya.org/tmw Technology Masterclass Workshop. In fact, I'll be sharing the link on the YouTube live itself. Yeah, so that's basically the link. So you can use this particular link to register. You can just click on the apply button here, which will direct you to a payment gateway directly. And trust me, people, this is actually one of the most interesting programs that we've come up with until as of now. And we'll actually be dealing with a lot of aspects over here. So it's going to be completely industry driven, because our approach at Widhya is to make sure that you get a proper understanding of how things work in the industrial aspect. And we want to make sure that you get there through what is being done. So we'll be using a lot of new content. I mean, we'll be going through a couple of missions. We'll be showing you codes that are out of the missions available on our platform. We'll be explaining you concepts. That's the best part. So we'll actually be going from ground up. We'll be starting from 0 and we'll be taking you all the way to 1. And right now, we're actually charging just 499 rupees for this particular webinar. In fact, to make things interesting, if anyone is actually going to register over the next 10 minutes, that is until 8 o'clock, I'm actually going to reduce the payment to 399. So as of now, let me just do it right away in front of you people. So here it is. So I'm updating this particular price to 399. So that's like effectively 100 rupees lesser. So if you can make the payment within the next 10 minutes, then this particular thing is going to cost you just 399 rupees. Okay. And this particular, the sessions for the webinar would be held in the evening. Okay. The date for the thing would be 1st of December. So we'll be starting from 1st of December onwards. So from 1st of December, it's going to be on 5 days. Okay. And it'll be from, mostly it'll be from 6 to 8 p.m. Depending on whether, there's more time required for the session, we might opt for another extra half an hour on particular days. So the sessions would be held from 1st of December onwards in the 5-day masterclass workshop. So that's pretty much about it. So in case, you have any particular questions with respect to the masterclass, please feel free to put them up in the comment section below. So honestly, the Tech Fellowship is a completely different program, Pawan, because in the Tech Fellowship, we won't be teaching anything per se, right? So over here it's just going to be more about understanding. Over here we'll be teaching you through live learning sessions and pre-recorded sessions, whereas the tech fellowship is more about just solving things on Vidya's platform. So it's just going to give you an industrial experience, whereas this particular masterclass workshop is going to be something that teaches you various concepts in data science and also makes sure that you get that industrial experience by solving various tasks and things like that. Bharat, I'm not sure which what you're referring to. Is there any new project? I'm assuming you're referring to, uh, something related to. Okay, so if you're referring to the projects that we'll be covering with respect to the technology masterclass workshop, then over here we'll be we'll be focusing on certain projects related to the fintech domain, and we'll also be working on 5 different industrial projects. Okay, each of these projects are going to be tasks. Okay, with on Vidya's platform itself. So you'll and each of these projects will be given as a task after a particular day of a workshop. So it's going to be a progressive workshop where we make sure that you learn concepts and implement them on the go. So you'll have certain tasks that you have to complete and things like that, but it's going to be really fun, especially considering the community that you're going to be a part of. You can always make sure that you ask your questions over there if you get stuck anywhere. So Mansoor, for the tech fellowship, it's going to be pretty much just the same missions that we have, but I'd like to keep the tech fellowship out of this for the time being. I mean, if you have any questions, you could put them up on the Slack workspace and we'll help you out over there. Shaunak, unfortunately, we do not have any project related to oil and gas domain. Sorry about that. Anurag, Vidya does give internships. In fact, we'll actually be giving higher priority for internships being posted on our platform. And we're actually launching an internship portal as well in a couple of days. And once we do that, people who register for the technology masterclass workshop and all of that actually will get a higher priority to bag these internships. Yes, I see Adil has mentioned that project is from scratch to end. And yes, all the projects that you'll be working on will be from 0 to 1, literally from starting from 0 to actually going really higher up the order. So just a quick question. So how many of you are actually interested in this particular workshop? How many of you would actually be registering for the particular workshop? If you will, then, I mean, if you're interested, please mention a yes in the chat section. Bharat, I mean, see, jobs, we are not looking at jobs yet, but yes, we will be having that sometime in the future, but not right away. So if you're looking at availing the 399 offer, it's valid only for the next 5 minutes. Okay. And the reason we're doing that is, I mean, like we initially, because since we've just started this workshop, although the price of this particular thing is 2000 rupees, we decided to offer it at 499, which is effectively 75% discount. But if you register within the next 5 minutes, you're going to get another 100 rupee extra discount, which will effectively make the price 399. So after 5 minutes, the price goes back to a higher amount, which is 499. And yeah, I mean, instead of spending that 100 rupees over here, you might as well just save that and spend it on something that's much more important eventually, right? Rishikesh, this particular aspect we'll be able to share it. We'll be able to share the codes only after we, use the particular, only after people register for this particular program. So we'll be sharing, a certain link where you can avail these development tools. Anurag, trust me, I think this is as less as it gets. I think 399 is a pay. I mean, like if you really think it's on the higher side, then there's not a lot that I can really say about it, because we are offering it at literally a cutthroat price. I mean, yeah. So it's besides it's going to be a live come pre-recorded thing. So I think 399 is the best price that we can offer. In fact, it'll be better than anywhere else that you can look for a similar course, because we're also giving you that industrial exposure, right? So yeah. Um, okay, so brief more on the workshops. Essentially, so I mean, all the details about the workshop are given in the particular link itself with respect to the TMW. So you can just scroll down here to see exactly what all we'll be working on. But I'll just go through this again. So we'll be one aspect we'll be working on is web scraping. So we'll be looking at making sure that you know how to build your own data set from scratch. We'll also be teaching you how to use modules like Numpy and Pandas in a much more detailed manner. Data cleaning as well, which we saw today, an extension of that. We'll also be dealing with exploratory data analysis, which we went through today, but we'll be dealing with more aspects of EDA. Okay, so this will be like a complete session on its own. So we'll be devoting like about 2 hours just for this particular thing. And then finally, we'll be looking at how to come up with your own formula, because a lot of times as data scientists, what happens is that you might not necessarily be able to um, fit your models or build machine learning models using the existing algorithms. You might have to come up with your own formula to compute a certain compute a few metrics and things like that. And yeah, I mean that just makes it all the more difficult, right? So we'll be giving you a perspective on how to build quantitative models. And finally, we'll be focusing on predictive models using basic machine learning algorithms and an ANN algorithm using Keras. So these are the things that we'll be focusing on over the 5-day workshop. So yeah, that's basically about it over there. And in case you register for it tomorrow, then you can just come on to this particular link over here, the same link. You can just come on to vidhya.org/TMV and click on the apply button over here. Okay. And you'll be redirected to this particular page, the Razorpay payment page, where you can fill in your details and make sure that you make the payment for the program. It starts from 1st of December and it'll be a 2-hour session. Tentatively, the timings for the workshop is 6 to 8 p.m. So yeah, I mean, we'll be letting you know about the exact timings a week before the workshop starts, but yeah. So per day, it depends on you. So I mean, like, see, the 2-hour session is going to be there anyway. But beside that, I mean, apart from that, I think if you could give like, about, let's say, half an hour to 1 hour more, because some days you might be having tasks and all of that to complete. So having that, extra half an hour, 1 hour would help you complete those tasks as well. Shaunak, you can make the payment using this particular, using this particular link. So you can just go onto this particular URL and click on the apply button, after which you will be redirected to the payments page, where you'll have to fill some details and also make the payment. Anurag, so it's going to be beautiful. Yes, beautiful soup, Numpy, Pandas, EDA using Matplotlib, Seaborn, Pandas and all of those things again. Apart from that, Keras, scikit-learn, but most importantly, I think this is the thing that is going to make a change. This is what will make a difference. Okay, this particular aspect to build quantitative models, this aspect is what will actually act as a game changer for all of you, because this is something that's usually not taught everywhere. And even if it is taught, it's not taught in the right manner. So we'll make sure that these things are being conveyed to you in the right possible manner, because this is something that actually forms the crux of data science. And as a data scientist, it's extremely important to know how to build quantitative models from scratch. Shaunak, I just mentioned, right? You can make the payment using this particular link. So just go onto the link over here, click on the apply button. On clicking the apply button, you'll be redirected to a Razorpay payment gateway page where you can fill in your details and make the payment. Kiran, I think I've already mentioned that the feedback needs to be given via Vidhya's portal itself, right? So after you upload the code on Vidhya's platform, you'll be able to submit a rating and a review. Okay, and only after you submit the rating and the review over there on Vidhya's platform, you'll be able to generate and receive your certificate via email. So the review and the rating will have to be sent via the mission itself. So once you're done with this mission, the Bitcoin price prediction mission, you're just supposed to upload the code using the in the upload code section of the thing over here. So you can just upload the code over here. Once you upload the code, you'll be redirected to a review and ratings page. Post submitting the feedback, you can generate your certificate from here and get it emailed to you via on your email ID. Sorry. So so we'll be sending the code by later tonight, probably around 9 p.m. or something. So we'll be sending the code by then. So Rishikesh, yes, I mean, you will have access to the webinar material. So essentially access in the sense, I'm assuming that, you're referring to the video and the codes. The codes will anyway be shared, and the video is already available on the same link with which you access this particular live video. So after the live is done, you can access the recorded video on the same link. Aritra, I think this has already been mentioned on the Slack workspace. So, you can just have a look there. So the certificates anyway will be out by 25th, and we'll be putting up the leaderboards by tomorrow. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to keep this $3.99 offer available for another 5 minutes. So if any of you are interested to sign up in the next 5 minutes for 399 rupees, please feel free to do so. Okay, and yeah, I mean, please feel free to do so. You have like another 5 minutes to register for the workshop at $3.99, post which we'll be making it $4.99 again. So yeah, I mean, it's more like an early bird discount. So make sure that you make the best use of it. Anurag, the Slack workspace is not a community just for data science, but it's basically for tech in general. And Mohan, yes, there will be time for doubt clearance in between the sessions in the workshop as well. That'll be a really interactive session, so no worries about that. Bharat, if you'll get the certificate only after you upload the code and submit the feedback. So after you upload the code of the mission, you need to submit the feedback, post which you can generate the certificate from within the app itself, from within over here, and that'll be directly emailed to you on your registered email ID. Oh, Rishikesh, yes. The TMW sessions, all of them will be recorded. In fact, you'll have access to all of those sessions as well. Besides, we'll also be sharing tons of PDFs and PPTs with all of you, curated, by Widhya along with a few other people and all of that, like few other institutions and places. So yeah, it's something that's going to be really interesting. So, you'll have lifetime access to this material as well. So that's not an issue over there. Anurag, yes, we do have a certain limit in mind because we don't want to compromise on the quality of the number of people who join the workshop. I mean, it's just that we want to make sure that whoever joins the workshop makes sure that they get the most out of it. So we also want to we also want to be in a position to be able to give enough attention to everyone. So yes, there is a limit. So in case you people are looking at registering for the Technology Masterclass workshop, please visit this link and click on the apply button that's available below the data science option over here. So you can just click on this link, which will redirect you to the Razorpay payment gateway. And Bharat, you can use the certificate anywhere, right? I mean, like, so if you're bothered about certificates, I'm pretty sure you also know where you want to put them up. You can obviously, say that you've attended a workshop, or you've learned a particular concept or something like that on your resumes, and you'll have a certificate to back it up. You can post it on LinkedIn if you want. So it's up to you. I mean, it's totally up to you. Okay, people, 2 more minutes before we close this particular offer out. So in case you want to register for it as an early bird, please do register for it ASAP. You can upload the code by you can upload the code anytime. So we'll be sending the code anyway by 10 p.m. tonight. So you can upload the code anytime after that as well. So that shouldn't be an issue. Okay, people. So that's pretty much it from our end. So this is all that we had from our end. So there's just 1 more minute to go. So you can register for the Technology Masterclass workshop if you wish to. And that's pretty much it from our end, people. So thank you so much for attending this particular session. I'll also be sharing more. I'll also be sharing an email later tonight with the code and a few other things. So you can have a look at that as well. So that's pretty much it, people. Thank you so much for joining the session. It was really amazing interacting with all of you. Thank you so much and have a great day. Bye-bye.